If you needed further evidence that the Flames are truly the most average team to ever exist, look no further.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I'm your host, Jess Bemosto, and thank you so much for joining me here today. Along with me is Nick Zararis. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm good. We're in the week before Christmas. We're almost to the weekend of the weekend before Christmas. We're almost there.
We're almost there. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Today, we're just going to continue to prove a point that the Flames will more than likely be at the middle of the graphic when it comes to rankings 90% of the time, and you're not going to want to miss this. Subscribe to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on YouTube as well, because we're here for you 5 days a week, and it's the place to be. I feel like we truly start every show like, what are the Flames? Who are the Flames? Do they know?
They don't. And that has been a recurring theme of the show for the last 18 months, that they have been trying to find what their identity is going to be after losing Tkachuk and Gaudreau. The front office has more or less said, we are going to attempt to do the workman. Everybody plays as hard as they possibly can. It's not that we're untalented. We don't have anybody who's particularly amazing. But in theory, if we have 18 guys who are all ranging from average to pretty good, we can be competitive. And the Flames are competitive. They are firmly in the soggy middle. They are about as average as it gets. When you look at the league-wide standings, they're sitting currently a couple points out of a playoff spot, but that's not really what I'm thinking about here. When I'm talking about the season, I'm talking about where they are in relation to the whole league, not just the Pacific Division, not just Western Conference. They're 23rd in standings points of the entire NHL. They are currently on pace for 79.5 standings points. That would put them in bottom 10 of the entire NHL based on last year. When we talk about last year's NHL season, the 20th ranked team in standings points finished with 91. If the Flames were to continue on the pace they are currently on, they would have been the 25th worst team in the NHL last year. So they're not just average. They're not just 15th, 16th like they were last year. They are notably worse than they were last year right now. And I won't say it's entirely because you lost a 34 goal guy, but Tyler Toffoli being their best player last year and, a 10-ish standings point drop off, not the most convoluted conclusion to draw there.
I think that in terms of comparing things to last year, Blake Coleman did an interview recently and talked about how the vibes are a lot different than they were last year, even though they're not really particularly playing better than last year, but they're better at policing the room and no one's the poison in the room, which is nice, but we kind of want to see better, stuff on the ice too, not just like, oh yeah, we're all friends, we all get together and I host Thanksgiving at my home in Texas. Like, there is a reason to want this team to do better, but at the same time, it's like bottom of the league like that. You're in the draft lottery.
They are remarkably average. I mean, pretty much every benchmark stat you're looking at, goals per game, goals against per game. The one thing they are not average stats-wise in is goaltending, and that's why they had the really rough stretch in their last 10. They're 4-4-2 in their last 10. But I would point out that their save percentage during that window was like 880. We talk about league average being about 900 in today's NHL, all situations, and it's about 880 at 5-on-5. For the Flames, it's about 890 league-wide, I want to say, for save percentage league-wide. So 899 is all situations. And in the last 10 games, the Flames are somewhere in the high 880s, like 888, 887. And, you miss Markstrom a couple of games in there. You go from a solidified starter to an unproven guy with a good developmental track record and somebody who's only ever been a backup, you expect some drop off. But when you are this dependent on puck luck going your way to win a lot, and you don't have guys who are capable of manufacturing puck luck, you are going to have a hard time. I said it on Monday on Liberty Blue. Luck is what happens when opportunity meets talent. Okay. When talent has an opportunity, they can make things happen for themselves. It's why I talk about guys like Jack Hughes, Rupe Hintz, Connor McDavid. And yes, I put Rupe Hintz in a sentence with those two guys. But as far as just making offense, getting the puck, carrying it through the neutral zone, and getting to offense with speed, those are the invaluable skill sets, because those are guys who are capable of changing the game state by themselves. They don't need anyone else. You get them the puck in the defensive zone, they will get 3 or 4 steps, be at top speed, weave through the neutral zone, get to the offensive zone, and the rest of the offense can flow off of that. That was something that Johnny Gaudreau, once upon a time, was one of the best in the entire league at, was he could take the puck from anywhere. He was great at bobbing and weaving through traffic, and that's all he had to do. He was good enough at that it didn't really matter who you played with him, because he had enough talent to make up for that. And the Flames don't have anybody that dynamic. I would say their best player talent-wise is probably Rasmus Andersson, who's a good defenseman. He doesn't have any elite traits. I'd say he's an above average player in most aspects of the game, but nothing elite. There's nothing in his game that's going to be able to materially change the game state. So when you are a team like this, like you think about some of the teams that have had success, even though they're not really talented, but they have one really elite guy. You think about the Predators with Roman Josi. You think about the Wild with Kirill Kaprizov. Those types of players, Clayton Keller on the Coyotes, one really dynamic player is able to raise the tide of everybody else on their line. The way the Flames play, they need everybody perfect pretty much all the time if they want to win most nights. And it's why they're so mediocre, because it is really hard to live like this in the NHL, where you need everybody to play well on any given night, just to have a chance to win, let alone to, actually win.
And that's not how you want to play and how you want things to be structured. That's basically just walking on eggshells all the time. You make one mistake and it's over. And that's just not a good, conducive way to play hockey. But we are going to talk about the last 10 games and, what does it all mean coming up next. But before we do that, we are going to take a quick break, and I am going to talk to you about an app that hockey fans could really love and take advantage of. A new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. The Flames could hoist the Stanley Cup, and Rasmus Andersson could score 50 goals. And you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy hockey app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy hockey sports. And because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick weather studs like McKinnon, Makar, Ovechkin, Crosby, probably not Ovechkin at this point, but will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times your bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Flames fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention, and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, find us wherever you get your podcasts. And, oh boy, it's hard to believe that we're already at the roster, the holiday roster freeze.
It goes quick, man. The days are long, but the months are fast. It's very cliche, but it's true in a hockey sense. I mean, the games are accumulating. Everybody's played at least 25 games now. There's some variance where some teams have only played like 26, 27. I think the team with the most has 34 or something like that. But we're getting to the point now where this is kind of where the league is. More likely than not, of the 16 teams that are currently in playoff spots, about 13 or 14 of those teams will make the playoffs. There will be 3 or 4 teams that are currently in playoff spots that will fall off, and teams that are not, that'll jump into those spots. But for the most part, we can compartmentalize and say the Rangers are definitely a playoff team, the Bruins, the Leafs, the Panthers, then in the West, the Stars, the Avalanche, Vegas, the Kings, the Canucks, just based on the points. Even if the Canucks come back down to earth, they've banked enough where even if they play 500 hockey the rest of the way they're in, that's a good 8-9 spots right there. And then we go down the list a little bit more. You talk about teams like the Islanders. You maybe, if you want to start believing that the Flyers maybe can do this, when for the most part, there isn't going to be a whole lot of movement. I saw the power rankings came out, and I'll talk about those tomorrow with Hunter, but everybody's in the exact same spot pretty much, except for the Flames and the Oilers flip-flopped, and the Flyers went up a couple spots. Other than that, everybody's in the exact same spot as last week, which I think is pretty accurate of where we're going to end up. I mean, the Flames are going to volley back and forth, and if they get in, kind of like last year, it would purely be because things around them went their way. We talked about last year how that race for that last playoff spot, that second wild card, was shaping up to be the worst team to make the playoffs in 7 or 8 years. I want to say that Winnipeg ended up with 94, 95 standings points, and the low point, the previous low in the last 10 years was, I think, 95 to just make the playoffs. So it took a lot for the Flames to even be in the mix last year for as average as they were. This year, I mean, like I said in the first segment, if you are talking about 80 standings points, you're talking about picking 9th or 10th in the draft, not a playoff spot.
Oh boy. And let's say it right now. Do you think that this the Flames playoff spot is going to come down to game 82? Or will they
the Flames will be out of it by the trade deadline. I'm pretty confident that by the trade deadline, they will trade off Lindholm and Hanifin. And at that point, you're not a playoff team when you trade your number 1 center and your 3rd best defenseman. You're not.
That, that is a very good point. And I mean, like you said, they went 4-4-2 in their last 10. And that's not going to get you very far when your season started off basically with a 7-8 game losing streak, or 6 games rather. But they don't have the capability of making up the lost ground. It's like
more likely than not now.
They haven't even reached 500 yet. And I feel like they've been like clawing to get there for weeks.
Every single time they put together 2 good games in a row, you start to think maybe they can turn the corner, and then they come out and lose the next game. And it's not that they've played particularly poorly in any game that like stands out in the back of my head is like, oh, this is what they really are. They're just very dependent on a night-to-night basis on what happens. They are a luck team, and they don't have guys who can make their own luck. In their last 10, they've scored 32 goals. They've conceded 35. At 5-on-5, they've scored 21. They've conceded 24. If you average about 3.1 goals per game, that is league average. If you are conceding more than 3.1, you are going to have a hard time. The Flames have conceded, I want to say it's 24 divided by 2. Yeah, they've conceded more than 3.1 on average over the last 10. And then you go under the hood at 5-on-5. They're below 50% in scoring chances. They're below 50% in goals. They are over 50% in expected goals and high danger, which does lead you to believe that they have a little offense that's not being capitalized on. So maybe, you start getting that one extra goal a week and that goal share trickles up to 48, 49%. Mm-hmm. But we're still talking about a team that's living on the margins of being average, not like on the margins of being good. Like best case scenario, the Flames are the 17th or 18th best team in the entire NHL. Like that's the absolute best case scenario.
I said it last week, but Yegor Sharangovich being your best player is concerning. That
Yeah.
should not, like, while it's so great to see him doing well and having this bounce back year, you don't need him to be your best player. You need one of the players that have, have the past track record of being the best player on their team to step up. I saw a tweet yesterday, or maybe it was this morning, that Huberdeau has gone 9 games without a point. $10.5 million. I'm sorry. That's unacceptable.
They have not found a way to get anything out of him. He does not fit the way they like to play. He's not a grinded out type guy. He needs people around him who can rip it, and they don't have any shooters on this team to complement him with. They don't have any puck carriers to carry the puck through the neutral zone for him because he's not the fastest guy in a straight line. I mean, I talked about it before we started recording. Their leader in goals above replacement right now is Connor Zary, who's been on the team for all of 3 weeks, 2 weeks. I want to say he has maybe 15 something games.
Wait, I have
Hang
it
on.
pulled up right here. 22 games. He's been with the team
Yeah.
since Halloween.
Yeah, so he's of the 32 games they've played this year, he didn't play in the first 10 or so. If somebody with that profile who, lives on the margins, 15 minutes per game, not on your power play, not anybody you really expected anything from this year, that tells you everybody else is kind of underperforming. If somebody with this profile is kind of leading your team in anything, like, I know goals above replacement can kind of be a bit of a nebulous stat where people get lost in the weeds. I was talking about it with you before we started recording, where if you just exceed your shooting talent, you're going to have a really good goals above replacement. Like I said, like the leader in goals above replacement was like Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, and then fourth was Jared McCann of the Kraken last year. So like there are limitations to the statistic, but as a drop down, like temperature check stat for a team, it's a good way to gauge who's helping and who isn't. And one thing I will say, which I did find funny when I pulled this up before, the person who had the lowest goals above replacement on the team this year was Nikita Zadorov, who was negative in every single category. When you look at the way it's broken up into is offense, defense, power play, penalty kill, taking penalties and drawing penalties. The only thing he was positive in was taking penalties. So,
Sounds right.
he does. No, meaning he takes slightly less penalties than the other team, but by 0.2, so not a particularly large amount. But there's enough talent on this team that they should be better than they are. You heard me cite that stat before, that their goal share and is below 50%, even though they're high danger and their expecteds are over 50. Again, that reinforces what we talk about a lot, that their talent, they're guys like Coleman, like Mangiapane, the guys who have to live at the net front. Those aren't guys who are scoring from outside the circles or the high slot. Those are guys who have to get to the net. They have to win position. They have to hope for rebounds. It is really hard to score like that consistently just because the toll it takes. It is physically demanding to play like that, on top of it just being hard to constantly have to do the same thing over and over again. We talk about it all the time that the best teams have multiple ways of scoring. The Flames really only have one way. They got to get the puck to the net, and they got to look for rebounds and deflections. They are living about as difficult as you can to score right now.
I feel like you have to have fingers, toes, arms, legs, eyes crossed in order for them to score a goal. And you just have to hope for it, because like you said, there's no one on this team that has that pure shooting talent. And if there is someone that has, on the cusp of that, that's Matt Coronado. And he is not seeing NHL time right now. And it's confusing, but at the same time, let him get those consistent minutes with the Wranglers and hopefully build up and, build up that stamina and just get some experience from college to the pros. But coming up next, we're going to talk about hope, because it always feels like that's what we're all hinging on with the Flames. You hope they score, you hope their goaltending's good, and some people are hoping they tank. So we're going to talk about that coming up next here on Locked On Flames. But before we do that, we are going to take a quick break, and I'm going to talk to you about FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That is $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to do it and to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use with a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit fanduel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into today's episode. Make sure you're following us on X at Jess Bemosto and at Nick Zararis. Tell us, Nick, is there any hope?
Depends what you mean. Hope of what? That's the first question. What are you hoping for? And then I can.
I don't know. An entertaining season, not just,
Then you
like
need
the
them to trade
Sharks.
one more defenseman. If you want to be entertaining, you need them to trade one more defenseman so the team defense gets a little bit worse and they have to be a little more cheating towards offense. That would be my answer to you. If you want the Flames to be in the chaotic corner of all the charts, you need them to be a little bit worse defensively. So they have to be more aggressive on offense because they're so vanilla on offense right now. They try and win every game 3-2, 2-1, which is, not exactly the most entertaining brand of hockey. But yeah, you want them to trade one or two more of the established guys. You want them to call up somebody like Coronado. You want somebody to latch onto. You want Dustin Wolf to get, 2 starts in a week. You need those little things to kind of glop onto because grand scheme of things here, I don't think anybody's delusional enough to believe this team is capable of winning a championship. I don't think there's anybody. I know people will say make the playoffs, anything can happen, but this team does not have any of the pieces requisite to go on that type of run. You look at the two big ones, the two ones everyone points to when 8 seeds have gotten to a cup final recently, Florida last year and the Kings who won the cup 10 years ago. The Kings had Jonathan Quick, who overrated in the context of history, but one of the 5 best goalies in the league at the time. And Sergei Bobrovsky is capable of playing like one of the 5 best goalies in the league at any given time. Now, some people will say, well, Jacob Markstrom has played like a top 5 goalie in the league. Yes. Once 2 years ago on a team that was significantly better than this. And that's not enough. One of the things we have the benefit of now is we have a little bit more detailed goalie statistics. We have something called goals saved above expected, which I know a lot of people will point out the save percentage and the goals above average. Those are the 2 stats you see on broadcast typically because those are the easy ones. Everybody can understand those. Goals saved above expected accounts for the workload, like how difficult the work the goalie has to do is. And yeah, 2 years ago, Markstrom, I want to say, was 6th or 7th in goals saved above expected. Really strong season. But he did that on one of the best teams in the entire league. He is not, I don't think Jacob Markstrom is capable of playing like that on an average team the way he is right now. No. It's not impossible, but it is unlikely. That's the way we have to think about these types of questions of what are we hoping for and what's realistic. It's not the easiest thing to accept, hey, they have to play another 50 games. And if they want it to be a playoff team, they're probably going to have to win 35 of them if you want to be conservative. I worked it out before. Conservatively, if you want to have what Winnipeg did last year, you need to win 33 of the next 50 games. That doesn't sound like a lot, 33 out of 50, especially when you consider the loser's point, and you could do something like 24 and, 9 overtime losses. It's not impossible. It is just very unlikely that a team that's had no luck all year, that doesn't have a lot of shooting talent, that can shoot out of their luck issue, it just does not seem like any of those things are going to go their way. So as far as hope, you hope that someone like Sharangovich sticks. You hope that this goal touch that he's found, you hope that stays. You hope that Dustin Wolf or Vladar, whichever one of them gets more work as Markstrom comes back, he's played the last couple games, but you hope that either they trade Vladar and they get Wolf up here and really start to give him run to kind of see if he's ready to do this. And you hope that some of the older guys like Kadri, like Huberdeau, Anderson, Uyghur, they don't start phoning it in. It's very easy to start making the business decision of game 53 in the middle of January on a team that's clearly not going to the playoffs. It's very easy to make the business decision, and I don't begrudge guys who do that.
No.
All the power to you. You're getting paid. This is a brutal way to live, being a professional athlete, especially in hockey. I'm not going to begrudge you if you make a business decision, but hope-wise, yeah, you hope the team is engaged enough that even if things continue to go the way they are, that they don't start phoning it in. Because that's one thing we have reiterated a lot this year is they're not playing terrible. It's just that this is probably about the best they're capable of.
And that's just the way it's going to be. Like, I don't see any sort of possibility with this current roster that I'm looking at right now on the Flames website. Like, I don't see any of these players having the season that they had 2 years ago, even if they weren't on this team. Like, no one, like Sharangovich is not going to score 35 goals like Mangiapane did. Dylan Dubé is never going to have that season again on this team, maybe another team. Jonathan Huberdeau, you don't have to hit 115 points, but if you could hit
60,
I'll lower my expectation from 75 to 60, but like we kind of need at least that. But this is your Calgary Flames. This is your 2023-24 Flames.
And that's why we've reiterated that they got to let young guys in here, so at least you have something to, someone you can project onto. We all kind of know what the bulk of this team is. There are not a lot of unknown quantities on this team. That's why it's been encouraging to see Connor Zary play so well. Boy, why seeing Pospisil get extended run is encouraging, because those are two guys you don't know what they are. Maybe they can be, a top 9 forward on a good team. And I know that's not exactly the most exciting thing in the world. Oh boy, another 40-point forward. But two useful top 9 forwards that are young, maybe they're on the team 2 years from now when they have a chance to be competitive again. It's not exciting to think about, we're 2 years away from probably being competitive again, but it's something. And that's why they need to lean on the young guys. Give the fans something to hope for. Dustin Wolf gets a great reaction anytime he starts because people are excited to see him. Even if he hasn't played great, he is something that people are excited about. There's not a lot that's exciting about this team.
No, and everyone should be excited to watch Dustin Wolf. I mean, he's proven himself in juniors and, minor hockey, but like he needs the opportunity to at least be average to start in the NHL. We just need a foundation. We don't need to see anything over the top yet.
We won't know about Wolf probably for another 2 years because teams slow play the hell out of their goalies. And we typically don't know what an NHL player is until they hit the 200 games threshold. For a goalie, it's a little bit less. It's usually about 150 starts. But he's got 5, 6. Like, it's going to take a while if they refuse to accept that Markstrom is a tandem goalie now. And I know, again, you're paying him a decent amount of money. If you're going to pay him that, he's not a tandem goalie. But don't be ignorant of the reality you're currently facing would be my counterpoint to that.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're going to leave it today because you got to open your eyes. Everyone in the Flames office, please do yourself a favor. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in to today's episode of Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts and, of course, on YouTube. We are a wonderful free gift to share with your family and friends throughout the holiday season. And stay safe, stay warm, stay dry. Nick, do you have any parting words?
I probably won't talk to you guys till after Christmas, so happy holidays to everybody out there celebrating. Have a good weekend, safe travels, all that good stuff.